This week on Arizona Illustrated, settling in Flagstaff.
It was a pre-arranged marriage, so he saved enough money to go to China to marry my mother.
The show goes on.
Even though the exhibition couldn't happen around its originally imagined time frame, it was really critical for everybody involved that the exhibition still happen.
And this week's favorite place, Armory Park.
Armory Park has become one of my new places of contemplation and appreciation through each breath.
Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. We're here inside the Arizona History Museum, where stories about Arizona's history abound. In fact, our first story takes us back in time. You know, back in the 1880s, the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad began to lay track in a small settlement called Flagstaff. With the railroad came workers from many nationalities, including Chinese men. Now, it wasn't until 1916 that the first Chinese family settled in town. And over the years, the Wang Jun family made a name for themselves as their family grew, along with their businesses and land holdings. And now, over 100 years later, the youngest sibling shares their story.
Somewhere down the road, someone's going to wonder what the roots were. I decided to research it because I am in my 80s now, and I am the last sibling that can do this. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
My name is Jimmy Jun Wang. I'm number 12 of a family of 12, and my parents' name was Wang Jun and Du Yu Wang. My family was the first Chinese family to settle in Flagstaff. The biggest surprise I had was that I learned that my father was not born in China. He was actually born in San Francisco. That was the key to the story. Hi, Moi Moi. This is my little niece, and that's my little nephew over there. These are all my little nephews and nieces.
Even though we're all taller than you, except for mine.
Don't rub it in. I can't help it.
I didn't really know we were the first Chinese family in Flagstaff. Uncle Jimmy told me. How'd you learn about it?
Well, we were the only Chinese here, and there was no one else except the cooks. There were a few single men that worked in the restaurants here.
When the Wang family arrived around 1915, Flagstaff was pretty small at that time. There was around 2,000 people, give or take. Here in Flagstaff, there had been some Chinese folks coming through town. It was a very transient population, and then often it was single men, so they would move on to different jobs or different areas after that. So it wasn't really until the Wangs that a Chinese family settled.
My grandfather, I think he came over around 1860, and he came through Mexico, not through the U.S. because it was too hard and too expensive. So he worked in the gold mines and worked his way up, but his goal was still to get to the gold fields in California, and worked his way up through Nogales when it was still a territory, and finally got to San Francisco. And so my grandfather, he married a woman. She was older than he was. She was already in San Francisco, and they had a baby, and that was my father. My father kicked around Chinatown all his teenage years, and when it came time, it was a dead-end street there for him, so his father told him to try Prescott. They were hiring people to work. They had several low-producing mines around Prescott. So that's when he left Chinatown and he worked there. And when he was there, his father told him it was time to get married. But there was a snag.
In 1882, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. It was the first time any ethnic group was barred from coming into the country. And many of the Chinese immigrants already in America were not allowed to become citizens, along with many other restrictions.
There were not many eligible women for wives, and Chinatown had a network, and it was a pre-arranged marriage. So he saved enough money to go to China to marry my mother. They had a child. He was over there a few years, and then he came back, mainly because he couldn't bring them back, bring them into the U.S. So the elders had advised him that he had to be a citizen to bring his family over. That's when he started applying for a birth certificate. He got the documents that his father had entered through Nogales. And that's how it got started. So they booked passage, came over in steerage in the bottom of the boat. My mother never saw daylight the whole trip. She said she almost died. She was so sick, nauseated. But anyway, they all went through Angel Island and they all got interrogated. And my mother, who had to go through a very vigorous physical examination, it came to be she was sick because she was pregnant with a baby. So she got through that, and that's how they got into the U.S. When my father and his family first arrived, they were going to work in the laundry, which my father had already established right down this corner. And they were going to work every day, and that's how they were going to make a living. The original laundry was a small two-room house, and the laundry was in part of it. My mother washed with a washboard, used a hand wringer, hung the clothes on a clothesline, and when it was cold, she hung them inside, and they all helped. 7 of the children were born on the second floor of the laundry. As soon as she was physically able, she went back to work after her birth. My father was a glad-hander. He worked hard and never broke the law. And that's the way he got around the laws. Because there were a lot of laws, they were aimed toward the ethnic groups. And the Chinese, especially in Flagstaff, it was prevalent then.
The Chinese Exclusion Act did have a big impact in Flagstaff. So everyone who was moving here would have known about that act and seen in the papers other places where people were being discriminated against or treated poorly, and the same thing happened here in Flagstaff. There was a group put together, an anonymous group, called themselves the Committee, and they were trying to intimidate people into leaving town. It was very vague threats, but we do have the records in the newspaper.
The siblings, my brothers especially, were good athletes, and they were very good in sports, and that helped the image because they were good athletes, and they helped the teams win, and my father was very proud of that, and he gained a lot of respect from the community through that. My father, when he ordered new staples and new goods from San Francisco, he always included some lottery tickets. And eventually he subscribed to the Chinese newspaper from there, and he found his number. And he won the lottery, $20,000. And that's how he started buying the property from that corner all the way to San Francisco Street. He had enough money from the lottery to equip a commercial laundry. Now, it was not a hand laundry anymore. It was my father's idea from the beginning that all these children that he had fathered were going to work forever in the laundry. It was a commercial laundry, and they were all going to work together and live together the rest of their lives. So that's why he built this big 10-room house behind us. You know, he never got to live in this house, believe it or not. He's the only one in the whole family that never lived in his house. My father passed away. He was hit by a school bus in an accident, and he was injured, and they could not diagnose his condition. And he was in such pain for so long that he finally went to San Francisco to the Chinese hospital in Chinatown to be treated by Chinese physicians. And that's where he died. My mother, she was the wife. She could not own the property. That was the law. If you were not a citizen, married or not, you could not own the property in your name. So it was in one of my brother's names. My father died when I was 6, and my mother died when I was 12. She died from a gun accident and a hunting accident. I remember the day when your great-grandmother was buried here with all the townspeople and all the relatives. 74 years ago, your great-grandmother died. Her dying words with my sister Margaret and my brother Bill were that they would take care of the minor kids, where the 3 of us were minors. It united the family, it solidified the family.
We decided to include Du Yu Wang in the resilience exhibit. She helped to run the business with her husband. She lost him, faced a number of tragedies in her life and overcame them, took care of her kids, helped with the business, so we wanted to really highlight her resilience.
I think my father would be proud of all of his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren on down the line. We always worked hard. Everybody worked hard. Even though they didn't have a formal education, everybody was, they were good at their trades, and they were good at their occupations, and they all did well, every one of them. We stored pinto beans in there. And all the mice used to run to our house from there. Well, being part of the first Chinese family, I think it was a great honor, and it was a wonderful accomplishment. If my dad had not pursued a citizenship, a birth certificate, it probably would have never happened, because my mother probably could have never come over, and it was because of his consistent efforts. It happened.
You can visit the Arizona Historical Society Pioneer Museum in Flagstaff and see the Resilience exhibit that features Du Yu Wang. The museum also has copies of Jimmy June Wang's book, Never Alone. Imagine working for years on your final thesis art exhibition only to have it canceled. Well, it happened in 2020 to graduating Master of Fine Art students at the U of A. During their final stages of show preparation, the pandemic brought it all to a screeching halt. But all was not lost. 14 months later, many of these artists were able to return, allowing for the show to go on.
I've had this space in my mind for like 5 years. When I was just looking at graduate programs and like looking at this program, I looked at the Joseph Gross Gallery and was like, that's where I'm having my thesis show.
So this is a quick tour starting at the very front of my apartment. Begin with just messy studio table over here. My name is Kenzie Wells. I am a 3rd year in the Masters of Fine Arts program here at the University of Arizona. And my predicament is that my thesis show for graduation that I've been working on this entire year has been questionably canceled, but as of right now it's postponed.
The MFA show is always a wildly ambitious endeavor. I've been here 4.5 years. Every year I've been really impressed with the students' ability to bring forward really large-scale projects in exciting ways.
Right now, I expected to be actually at this moment in the museum installing my thesis show.
Which is kind of like the culmination of what we work toward as grad students.
The thesis show for grad students in the School of Art is like, it's the dissertation. Like, that's the point.
This developed so rapidly and the news was changing so much every day.
So it just kept unfolding. Like, we got new information every day.
Suddenly we start getting these emails.
The emails, like millions of emails.
And then the next day, it's like thesis is being postponed.
Every day it was worse.
The day after that, it's like, we have to close the studios.
My heart just sank.
My thesis work, which for me specifically has been, a culmination of 3 years worth of work.
You have to acknowledge the disappointment, right, that happens as a result of realizing that certain plans are not going to be able to come to fruition in the way that they were originally imagined.
I also had a moment of panic, like I'm not sure what to do. I just graduated. There's no job to be found. A lot of my friends did actually leave. I stayed, I felt very alone, but at the same time I knew if I had gotten in my car and left, I'd be going to nothing.
Even though the exhibition couldn't happen around its originally imagined time frame, it was really critical for everybody involved that the exhibition still happen. And so what we're looking at about 14 months later is the realization of that commitment that was made on the part of everybody involved to see this through.
Nice job, congrats. Thank you. It's up. It's finally up.
For the past 5 years that I've been here, I've been working with environmental research and an environmental science laboratory, labor organizers that were involved in mining communities. And so through those interactions, I was able to create this experience that highlight rural stories in Arizona and rural mining community member stories in Arizona.
One of the pictures I took from up on that road. I think you can see your house from here. I was looking.
That's why it's so important to be able to schedule these viewings and actually have people that have contributed to the project come in and see it and interact with it in a more engaged way. It's so satisfying when you're waiting and something has so much buildup. It's been a huge accomplishment. So I'm so grateful to be here and to actually get it out there finally.
So this is the Alice Chayton Baker Interdisciplinary Gallery. It's our brand new gallery at the Center for Creative Photography. It was supposed to open in April of 2020, and it was going to begin with the MFA students in 2020. And so this is an opportunity for them to come back a year later and are poetically going to be the first installation that we have now. A lot of students, especially contemporary artists, are thinking about installation as an important part of their practice, right? So in order to have it actually installed in the gallery is to fully realize the pieces.
My project, essentially what it is, basically I was taking different photographic images and turning them into graphic musical scores by putting the lines of a staff over the images and having them interpreted by 11 different musicians. This is a little kind of magazine. You just hover over the QR code. It should open a little video, and then you can see the musician performing. So what's happening in these boxes is you can see live improvisations of the scores by different musicians playing on the back of the box. I wanted to really create a space that kind of felt like you were able to enter a different space, like a more surreal space. Also just like a really funny time to be making such interactive work right when COVID started, and then kind of finding out, are we really going to be interacting with artworks anymore? So it feels really good to actually just have had even just a few people coming and all interacting with the work. That was the best part so far.
I studied environmental humanities actually in college. And so going to art school for a graduate program was kind of a big leap. Putting this show on was definitely extra meaningful for me in particular, because I feel like this is the first body of work that I felt comfortable showing, that I was like excited to show. It started with my grandmother getting sick. One of the last times that I ever saw her, I started to take photographs of the shadows of the trees that were in her neighborhood. And I started exploring that visually, just like looking at different ways to represent just the tree shadows, kind of divorced from the tree itself. And I was starting to connect it to my grief for losing the forests and this kind of larger, what we call ecological grief. So I was very interested in the kind of like gradations of black and white and the interplay of light, and kind of making the perspective seem very confusing. To me, it's very intimate, and it really sucks to like be denied, you know, having other people be able to experience that intimacy with the work that I created.
It's wild to see it actually unfold in such a kind of clean and cohesive way, but I do think there's something very specific about being in grad school that pushes you so far to the point where sometimes you want to scream, you know, sometimes it's too much, but that drive and that push are definitely like things I wouldn't have personally gotten unless I did grad school. A lot of the pieces in the show offer that sort of idea about bathrooms or bathing or looking at yourself in the mirror, all those things that you do to care for yourself. As much as you try to do that with something like trauma, it's always going to be there, no matter what. Physical exhibition for this type of work is extremely important. One of the biggest materials I use is iridescence. The moving liquid nature of so many surfaces in this show can't necessarily be grasped unless you're like walking physically around it. Even a video wouldn't quite capture like seeing your own reflection in this and then being like, oh, like I can see myself in that experience as well. And that relatability is very much internal and physical.
This is the first time that we've had anyone back in our space, and to be able to see it come to life in this way, and especially in our brand new gallery, has been kind of that horizon line that we've all been looking for.
For them to come back and commit to this exhibition in the same way we would have seen them commit to it had they still been fully immersed in the program, that was pretty amazing to watch. I'm not sure I know of any other university nationwide that I've heard of that's followed through in that way with MFA thesis exhibition that was canceled because of COVID.
And we didn't know when it would be able to happen, if ever, just because the world was kind of on hold. But it really does kind of provide that closure that I think a lot of us have been waiting for this past year.
When architect Valeria Moraga was asked to select, write about, and eventually narrate a personal illustration about one of her favorite places in southern Arizona, all she needed to do was to walk out her front door and into the historic and comforting streets of her neighborhood, Armory Park.
As the world has changed so much over the past few months, I learned to appreciate things that are closer to home. After I finished my workday from my computer in my bedroom, the one thing I crave the most is some time outside. Armory Park neighborhood has provided this and so much more. Calmness, curiosity, and awareness are some of the things I feel when I step outside on my late afternoon walks. I live in one of Tucson's historic neighborhoods dating back to the early 1900s. Its architecture consists of different style buildings, from bungalows, Victorian, and contemporary. As much as the architecture is engaging, there's another thing that draws more attention to me: the people that each home represents. From the landscaping, front porch benches, chairs, couches, small tables with coffee mugs, books, and much more. It feels calm, inviting, and full of stories. Each front porch and back alley tells a unique story with a specific charm that it's not overwhelming, even if it looks a bit hectic. The small walks keep my mind occupied while creating curiosity of what is around me. Being able to get out and feel more life other than the few people I see week to week has been one of my little escapes that has kept me going during these times of isolation. The way that classes and culture mix makes this a very unique place. The streets provide a sense of community and integration that it's not usually felt. Its location is only a few blocks north of South Tucson and Santa Rita Park, and just south of downtown. These places bring culture and history that collide around the neighborhood. This can be seen through ornamentation, colors, textures, and items found throughout. During each walk, something new is visible, even if the path is the same. The trees around the sidewalks bring unique characters. The birds singing each morning and afternoon, the dogs barking and the cats wandering about, each integrated peacefully between streets and cars. Armory Park has become one of my new places of contemplation and appreciation through each breath and sound I experience. The walks through its alleys, sidewalks, and streets hold a special part within me. They've helped me more than they'll ever know. Armory Park neighborhood is one of my favorite places.
Before we go, here's a sneak peek at a story we're working on.
These patterns start forming and it shows you what it wants you to do. My name is Carlos Valenzuela. I've been designing, painting, fabricating murals out of glass and tile since I was about 17 years old. I never went to art school. My artistic training came through apprenticing with a community artist.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. We'll see you next week.